Sandman is a show on Netflix.
You have no idea what you have done.
And it has spoken Latin.
Da locam impiissime.
But how is the Latin? Let's find out together. I'm Luke, and this is polýMATHY. Now, I haven't seen much of this show, pretty much just this scene from the 3rd episode, in which this lady here
Da locam Christo.
performs an exorcism.
Da locam darissime.
Da locum darissime.
Da locam impiissime.
The first line at first, I wasn't exactly sure what she was saying, but the second one was absolutely clear. Da locum impiissime. So, give the place, O most impious one. That's the vocative for impiissimus. Actually, classical authors talk about how putting the issimus superlative suffix on pius sounds bad, but it's certainly a kind of Latin that actually has been used, so it's obviously fine. But those two lines were enough for me to Google it and find that this is actually part of something called the Rituale Romanum. That's the book that the one lady gives to the other.
She's in my office, or you're going to need the Rituale Romanum.
I can't just barge in there spouting Latin at her.
It's one of the official liturgical books of the Roman Rite of the Catholic Church. The Roman Rite has different components, and one of them is titled De Exorcismis et Supplicationibus Quibusdam, or of course in the ecclesiastical pronunciation, De Exorcismis et Supplicationibus Quibusdam, about exorcisms and certain supplications. So that's cool. It's more than just a thing in movies.
Da locam darissime.
Da locum darissime.
So the first line that she says is Da locum dirissime. At first, the way she says it, I wasn't sure if this were the vocative or the adverb. That's why in all pronunciations of Latin, including the ecclesiastical pronunciation, phonemic vowel length is in fact mandatory for the grammar of the language. Impiissime, I could hear as a vocative, like she's talking to a demon, I guess. Oh, impious one. But the first one, which I wasn't sure if it was darissime
Da locam darissime.
or durissime. In fact, it's dirissime. But it could be dirissime, and that's the adverb. And the difference between me and me is the difference between completely different words. So that's why I emphasize this so much, and why when I talk about the ecclesiastical pronunciation, I emphasize the phonemic vowel length anyway, because the grammar doesn't work without it. Spoilers, by the way, for this episode in case you haven't seen it or care. But the way she says impiissime has something wrong in it, and I really want to emphasize this because it's an important part about good Latin pronunciation.
Da locam impiissime.
And she adds a glottal stop between the two letters I. English speakers tend to do this to try to separate the syllables because they're afraid if they run them together, they won't comprehend that there's two vowels there. However, allowing that long vowel sound is a critical part of how the word must sound, and a glottal stop is a consonant. Don't add consonants where they don't belong. Impiissime is wrong. Impiissime is right. By the way, this scene has some kind of gruesome stuff in it. I'm going to try to not show too much of those things because I'm just concentrating on the language. Just to let you know, some of these images are a little bit disturbing.
Da locam Christo. Da locam darissime.
She also vacillates in trilling her R's with Cristo and darissime. So she uses an English R there.
Da locam Christo. Da locam darissime. Qua nihil invenisti de operibus tuis.
She pronounces nihil with an H sound. And that's interesting because in the ecclesiastical pronunciation, one has a few options. Given what she's doing, we would expect the ecclesiastical pronunciation in all of these words. So nihil, with a nice H sound, as in English, is an excellent classical pronunciation of that word. Now, there's ways that ecclesiastical pronunciation has traditionally pronounced this. One is, of course, not to pronounce the H at all, which, by the way, is also something you can do for this word in classical. But then we'd write it N-I with a long mark L. Nil, which means exactly the same thing as nihil, nothing. Well, it means something, but it's nothing, you understand. So ecclesiastical pronunciation will often do nikil, and this comes from the tradition of trying to pronounce the H sound, but since the ecclesiastical pronunciation is based for the most part on the phonetics of Italian speech, well, Italian can't do that. So if you hear a h, then you might make it a ch, because that's easier, and then turn the ch into a k. So all of these actually are found in ecclesiastical pronunciation. pronunciation depending on the individual. Although she is definitely using the ecclesiastical pronunciation, she says spoliavit.
Quite spaleavit.
She says spoliavit. She says invenisti with the va sound and not the wa sound. But then she says regnum
Qui regnum tuum destruxit.
and not regnum. The GN in ecclesiastical pronunciation must be gna, as it is in Italian. Also, an important note, it's not just regnum, it's not like canyon. That gna in, say, English or, say, niño in Spanish, that's only one gna. But in Italian, as in ecclesiastical Latin pronunciation, it's geminated because it comes from two consonants. So it must, in fact, be not regnum, but regnum, regnum. It's a geminated consonant.
Quite vetum ligavit. Et vassa tua deripuit. Visita, quas sumus Domine. Habitationem. Istam.
The next part that she says, I don't know if this is actually in the Rituale Romanum, but I did look it up, and it is a prayer in the Roman Breviary. And it's Visita quae sumus. So she says, I think, quas sumus.
Visita, quas sumus Domine. Habitationem. Istam.
It's quae sumus. And this is the verb quaeso in classical pronunciation, or queso, or even queso for ecclesiastical pronunciation. The vocalization of the S between vowels is an optional thing in ecclesiastical pronunciation because only about half of Italians actually voice a single S between vowels. So she has the stress in the wrong place. It's quesumus or quesumus.
Visita, quas sumus Domine. Habitationem. Istam.
She also says habitationem instead of habitationem. That is, she pronounces an initial H. I've heard this in ecclesiastical pronunciation done by English speakers predominantly, as well as Germans, though I have occasionally even heard it in Italians. Maybe they want to pronounce the H because it adds some kind of clarity, but technically, according to most ecclesiastical pronunciation rules, it shouldn't be possible. But, whatever, it's fine. I certainly understood it. That's something that's worth noting. How is her pronunciation? I understood, having never heard this prayer, having never heard the exorcism rites before, I understood everything she was saying the first time. I rewound and make sure I could, of course, actually understand everything, and I transcribed it all. But it was very easy to understand. For the most part, she's obeying ecclesiastical pronunciation rules, except for that notable regnum and the pronunciation of the H sound. But as is expected, she has plenty of British English habits in her Latin. Now, that's true for all of us. Whenever we're speaking any language, except without a huge amount of training, we're going to have some of our native accent in the language that we're trying to target.
Exi, ego, agaleo.
And then she says a part of the exorcism rite that I think is supposed to come before, but I don't know, maybe it doesn't really matter. Instead of words like transgressor, she actually uses the name of this demon instead. But, she's got it. She memorized all the words. Overall, her pronunciation strikes me as one of an actress. That is to say, someone who actually doesn't know or utilize the language, even in this position, whatever her job is. Clearly, this is something that she's done before or knows how to do. And unless these pronunciation errors, as I'm naming them, are an important part of actually performing the exorcism, I would just say this strikes me as an actor who has done her best to try to get the pronunciation based on what someone gave her, and this is the result. Well, then I got the idea, how is this dubbed into other languages?
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum impissime.
Da locum impissime.
So in Italian should have essentially perfect ecclesiastical pronunciation, because ecclesiastical pronunciation is based off of the way that Italians have traditionally pronounced Latin. So fundamentally, it should be perfect, right?
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum impissime.
Da locum impissime.
So the impissime sounds fantastic, but the dirissime does not, because the unstressed I is shortened from I to I. Instead of dirissime, it's dirissime. And the shortening, I know it doesn't sound like much to you, but to the ancient Roman ear, even if it were ecclesiastical pronunciation, it would be completely wrong. And that's just the fact of Latin. It is based off these phonemic vowel lengths.
Da locum impissime.
And this goes also for the word locum. She doesn't say locum, it is a short o. but she says locum
Da locum impissime.
because it's an open syllable and it's stressed. Well, it's very normal for Italians to lengthen that vowel, and so that sounds wrong as well.
Da locum Christo.
The way she says da locum Christo is absolutely perfect rhythm. Now, I'm criticizing this phonemic vowel length thing. Like, Italians probably, for the most part, even the ones that take Latin in school, probably are never taught to even think about this. So it's not like she should know better. It's not really where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the position that the Latin language, if you really get down to it, just doesn't work without this thing, even though people try to ignore it. But think about how many people try to communicate in English with awful phonology. Sometimes they do very well.
Yeah, but they were all bad.
And sometimes they don't.
My mother who cried in the TV when
Nevertheless, and maybe just a coincidence, but she gets it perfect. Da, nice long da locum Christo.
Da locum Christo.
And all the right syllables are long, all the right syllables that need to be short are short. It sounds so good.
Inconil invenisti de operibus tuis.
She says nir, no pronunciation of the H. That sounds great to me.
Quid spogliavit qui regnum tum destruxit.
Hold on now, Italian doppiatrice. You said regnum and not regnum?
Quid spogliavit qui regnum tum destruxit.
How can that be? I can only imagine it's because she's imitating the original actress, who also said regnum, and maybe she thought there was some purpose behind that and didn't second guess it and just rolled with it. But that is doubly wrong now. So two of them say regnum instead of regnum.
Quid victum legavit.
Some things Italian do in ecclesiastical pronunciation, which doesn't work for Latin, is to geminate final consonants and then to add an or vowel after it. The reason why it's not good is because it adds syllables. You don't want to add syllables where they don't belong, because then you're breaking the whole rhythm of the language.
Quid victum legavit. Svasa tua distrupit.
She ended up messing up the line here. She says disrupit, which isn't Latin. The word is diripuit, and it was said better in the English.
Visita quasumus domine.
Quasumus? What the? It's quasumus or quasumus. So, again, perhaps she's just imitating the original voice actress. Maybe the script was spelled wrong, because both she and the original actress said qua and not que or quai or something. That leads me to believe that it just has a typo in the script, and it's written something like quasumus instead of quasumus or quesumus. So on the whole, if I had to judge between the Italian doing ecclesiastical pronunciation, that is traditional Italian pronunciation, and the English woman doing ecclesiastical traditional Italian pronunciation, on the whole, the Italian, with the outstanding perfect vowel qualities and actually getting right some of the quantities and others wrong, the Italian a little bit better, and but again, the English actress did pretty well. But what about some other languages?
Darokam dairishimi. Darokam dairishimi. Darokam impiissime. Darokam impiissime.
The Japanese voice actors sound delightful. Impiissime. Very cute. I like Japanese a lot. I used to live in Japan, and I enjoy speaking it when I get the chance. So it just sounds, it sounds pretty okay.
Darokam Christo.
Darokum Christo. Delightful how in Japanese they, in fact, have to add syllables a lot to non-Japanese words where there are certain consonant combinations that Japanese phonology does not support. But how did the French do?
Da lucum dirissime.
Da locum dirissime.
Da lucum impiissime.
Da locum impiissime.
Da locum impiissime. I'm sorry, I love French. I love French accents in general, and this voice actress has very typical and strong French accent. Now again, this makes sense. The English actress has a pretty strong English accent in her Latin. The French one, a pretty strong French accent. Again, this is always to be expected, especially for a short scene where the proficiency in the language isn't the focus of what's going on. So the thing that stands out most about a French accent in Latin is that the R is the ra, the French R instead of the ra or ra, and that sometimes final syllables are stressed or accented in a noticeable way.
In quo invenisti de operibus tuis.
Operibus tuis, it's very cute.
Quid sporiavit qui regnum tuum destruxit.
And the French one also says regnum, and not regnum. GN as nya is also part of French orthography and pronunciation. I don't understand why this is happening.
Quite victum ligavit.
Quite victum ligavit.
Et vassatua diripuit.
Et vassatua diripuit. It makes me laugh so much. So if you are French and you like to converse in Latin or to pronounce Latin, this is something you probably do, and it is extremely helpful to those listening to you to not stress the final syllable, because it makes it very difficult for us to understand you. Let's hear Ukrainian.
Повторюйте за мною. Да локум дірісіме.
Da locum dirissime.
Да локум імпісіме.
Da locum dirissime.
Продовжуйте.
Да локум Крісто.
Da locum dirissime. So Ukrainian doesn't have the geminated consonant S as to S's, so it's definitely dirissime instead of dirissime, or dirissime, in fact, because both the first letter I and the double S need to be long. Another part that stands out that's definitely very Ukrainian is, of course, that beautiful Slavic L, which, of course, has no place in Latin, which is that la locum. It sounds great. I think it sounds like a beautiful Ukrainian accent. Like I said, I really enjoy all these accents. I'm just pointing out where each of these native speakers inherently diverges from Latin phonology. Again, that's to be expected, even potentially for the characters. There'd be at least some aspects of native pronunciation, whether it's the original Englishwoman actress or if any of the actors were native speakers of whatever language. Again, this is a normal thing.
In quo nihil inveniste deo paribus tuis. Cui tes poleavit, cui regnum tuum destruxit.
The way that she pronounces qui is to say cui, and that may be because the sound of w isn't regularly, in fact, pronounced at all for most Slavic speakers when dealing with Latin. This may not be something she's trying to do. I was actually expecting kvi, because that's the traditional pronunciation originally from Germany and then happened to spread to all the Slavic countries for some reason. So you would normally expect a Slavic speaker to say something like kvi or kvo, but she doesn't do that. She says kui, which is a different word. That's kui, that means to whom, instead of qui, which is simply who or which, the nominative.
Cui vicem leavit. Id vasia cui deipuit.
I can't quite make out exactly what she's trying to say, given that I know what the words are supposed to be. It sounds like she's saying Vasya instead of Vasa, Vasya being a kind of shortened nickname in certain Slavic languages. And also her ligavit, I'm not sure what it was. She may have in fact used the Ukrainian G sound, which ends up being a voiced like ligavit or something, or ligavit. I'm not sure exactly what it was. It's hard to make out, but it's cool. It's definitely very Ukrainian.
Cui vicem leavit. Id vasia cui deipuit.
Vasya kua dilipuit. It sounds pretty off from what it's supposed to be, but this is a moment of high action. Again, how many actual Latin speakers are watching the show who are going to notice these things who happen to be watching the Ukrainian dub? Hello.
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum impiissime. Da locum impiissime.
In the Spanish version, I chose the European Spanish one, not the Latin American one for this. Very typical sounding European Spanish. The retracted S is perfect for classical Latin. She says dirissime. The double S isn't observed. Again, we would expect this from Spanish speakers because in languages that don't have a distinct double S sound like Italian or Latin, we wouldn't expect the speaker to be able to achieve that sound. And let's finish it off with the German dub.
Dann sprecht mir nach. Da locum dirissime.
Da locum dirissime.
Da locum impiissime.
Da locum impiissime.
German, like French, has a different kind of an R. Da locum dirissime. It sounds very German.
Equo nihil investi Deo peribus tuis.
And of course, the German also says regnum. They all do, so I give up.
Quites poleavit qui regnum tuum destruxit.
Another typical thing of German is something that also happens in English, which is to use e instead of I in Latin. So she says Christo
Da locum Christo.
instead of, Christo if you're using the German R, or Christo as it should be.
Look, if our chat goes wrong, I've got a dead princess on my hand, a demon on the loose, and no one to pay my fee.
So, like I said, I haven't watched much of this show, just this scene and the beginning of the first episode. Seems interesting. Do you like this show? How do you think these various voice actors did, both the original actress and the dubbers? Leave a comment below. Let me know if you like this show or if there are other movies and shows that have scenes in Latin, especially if you tell me like the episode and how far into the episode. I can go and find it right away because I usually don't have time to watch whole long series like this, even if they're good. So let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Valete.